Hey, thank you so much, Dia. Wonderful to see everyone. I just wanted to start with a reminder. This meeting and all of our meetings are being recorded and will be uploaded to the Metro website. So just be aware of that. And to everyone listening in or coming to this later, thank you for your attention and your interest in the subject. Before we start our work today, I wanted to recognize my colleague Dia and let you all know about an important change in her career. So Dia had been working previously over in Metro Public Health specifically on decriminalizing mental health. She has now joined the mayor's office as a senior policy advisor. You worked very closely last fall together with our colleague, Eric Brown, on the Policing Policy Commission. And in that work and the work that we've all started here together, I think what we have seen is the benefit of Dia's extensive experience working in public policy and strategy development, primarily in the great state of Illinois. She's been a wonderful colleague. She's very strategic. Her process, expertise, experience across all kinds of public policy issues have already been incredibly valuable to everyone in the mayor's office. We're all really pleased to have her as a colleague. So I just wanted to say congratulations, Dia. We're so happy about your new role and looking forward to working with you on this project and many other projects in the future.
Delighted to be on board.
And with that, I will turn this over to you guys.
Greg Claxton, are you ready to kick this off? Greg, Wesley, can you turn the presentation ball over to Greg Claxton? Greg is going to walk us through 3 data slides, and we're going to have a facilitated conversation after those data slides. The conversation will draw on some of the conversation we've had before, but move into some new territory. So take it away, Greg.
All right, so this is mostly a reminder of what we took a look at last week with a few updates. So one is just a reminder on kind of the broad employment trends that we discussed. Again, this is national level data, but it's looking at the current average annual wage for occupations compared to how much the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, expects them to grow over the next 10 years. And so that's the chart on the right that shows kind of a lot of noise at the lower end in terms of sort of some occupations shrinking, some occupations growing, but then kind of as you move up the income scale, you see a general shift to faster growth. We summarize that in the chart, the table on the left, which just kind of groups occupations very, very generally into those earning below $30,000 a year, those earning between $30,000 and $70,000 a year on average, and those earning over $70,000 a year. And there's kind of two big points to take away there. One is kind of the fast growth that we see on the lower end of the income scale, the fast growth on the higher end, but then those middle income jobs growing much slower at 2%. Then the other is just the raw numbers for jobs in 2019 for each of those levels, where you've got a fairly large number of jobs, about 48,000, under 30,000, close to 100,000 jobs in that middle group that's growing the slowest, and then a much smaller number of jobs on the top. So again, just kind of keeping in mind that over the future national trends that we're part of, we're seeing kind of faster growth on among jobs at the lower end of the income spectrum. The second thing is a reminder, and this is a little bit more of an update, but the supply gap work that EPS did, we're making progress on updating this. We haven't quite pulled it all together, but I hope to have it for you next week. Just thinking in terms of the owner and rental markets, trying to understand what the supply of homes and apartments are or rental units are that are affordable at different income levels, and then trying to understand how many households there are at each of those income levels and where there's a gap. And the way that the red negative numbers on the top of the chart reflect, kind of the, even conceptually, if you could match everyone perfectly, there would still be substantial cost growth. So one of the things that we did do this week in the chart on the left is we went back to the EPS report that was the genesis of this. And to simplify, I've focused in on just renter households. And what we've done is we pull forward the historical data that the consultant had prepared at that time, looking at 2000 to 2015. And so what this shows is the first two columns are the rental gap. So the negative numbers, again, are where you've got too few units for the number of households available at a current income level. And you can see, that those numbers are getting substantially worse from 2000 to 2015. So that's a long-term trend that until we sort of figure out all the pieces that go into that, we expect to continue. The other thing that we've tried to do that is still a work in progress, but we've got something preliminary for, is the chart on the right. This is looking at the snapshot of all everything that we've been able to identify so far as currently affordable units. The core of this is the preservation database. We had started looking at that after last Thursday's meeting. Jeremy sent around a snapshot of that with some additional LIHTC funded projects. What we're working to do now is reconcile that with all of the other sources of data that we have and try to get kind of a single view of all of this. All of the units tracked into the preservation database, it includes a wealth of information where they've identified if a particular complex has multiple funding sources. They've identified all of those, tried to merge them together so that there's no duplication. So that's a major step forward. They also identify expiration dates for when the subsidy or the renewable limit is expected to expire. We've plotted that out through 2030. We've called out MDHA on the bottom to recognize even though they may nominally have an expiration date, our understanding is MDHA intends to continue renewing those going forward. Now we know that a lot of these units will be renewed anyway, even the non-MDHA ones. But it's sort of one of the issues that we're facing, particularly in the urban core, is that market pressure to have them roll off completely when their expiration is up. So I think that's this is still very much a work in progress. We've got a few things that we need to follow up on from conversations with Matt, Jeremy, and Angie over the last couple of days. But we're hoping to sort of build together a more complete picture here. But the general trend of stock of housing units that we have, the number may shift a little bit as we refine this, but the general trend of kind of that need to continue renewing them as they roll off, we expect that trend to come through in the final data set. And so with that, Dee, am I passing it back to you to sort of go through the discussion?
Good question. So what I'd like to do is, Greg, can you email the committee members a PDF copy of this? And if you need to take your screen down for a couple of minutes, that's fine. I'd like to be sure that committee members have these data slides in front of them.
Sure.
Wesley, can you pass me the ball while Greg's doing that? And while I get my screen up, I can see that there's at least one hand that has been raised. So I just want to ask for everybody's grace as we make these transitions in a virtual environment. It's I will say, an interesting process to try to conduct a conversation with illustrations and notes in a virtual environment. So what I'm going to do is put up some information that you all completed in our last meeting. And while I do that, I'd like to call on Councilwoman Allen, who has her hand raised. So if you can pull yourself off mute and share with us, there we go. Share with us your question or comment.
Great, thank you for letting me just get some clarification. Greg, on that list of expiration dates, does that include the project-based rental assistance, multifamily housing that MDHA has gotten an inventory of?
I believe so. Kind of working through what some of those categories are is one of the things we need to do. There's kind of 4 broad categories that it identifies. And my understanding is that those are by and large what's generally referred to as project-based subsidies.
So, yeah, so specifically what I'm talking about is a specific federal program that has ended, but as long as we preserve what we've got, they will continue to adjust what they pay the owner to a market rate as long as the owner keeps up with the paperwork. I just want to make sure that we keep an eye on that stuff, because if we lose it, it's gone forever, and we lose like 200 units at a time.
Okay.
So if you can just make sure that specific program is not just, I think that also includes a general term, but what I'm referring to is something very specific, and not picture from NDHA. We've had lots of conversations about that. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. I'm happy to. Yeah, we expect to circle back with Matt and MDHA, so I'm happy to add that to the list to make sure.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And Councilwoman Allen, we will get a chance to add a list of additional data we need. So when we get there, I hope you will bring this point up again. But what I'd like to do for the time being is start the discussion. We spoke a little bit about factors restricting the preservations of units below 80% AMI in a previous conversation. You all have notes from that previous meeting. I'd like to just quickly take a look at those factors restricting the preservation of units below 80% AMI. Based on that conversation, if there's anything else to add, we can do so now. What was discussed previously was units will go market rate due to expiring tax credits and subsidies, the PBRA. Limited duration of incentives for affordable housing, no dedicated funding for Section 8, and not enough code enforcement to incentivize the use of Section 8. Misaligned resources, no eviction prevention plan currently. One-time costs are also a real barrier. So is there anything to add to factors that restrict the preservation of units below 80% based on the data that we're looking at right now?
This is Berkeley Allen. Does this list include just the pressure for gentrification and displacement of naturally occurring affordable housing?
So we can add that. So you would like to see so that's restricting the creation or restricting the preservation of units.
Yeah, and I would add for NOAA, which you just need to remember that's not the organization, it's not. That should be preserved if we could figure out how to resist that pressure.
You know, I missed that. I'm going to ask everybody to mic themselves if they are not currently speaking. Would you mind saying that again?
For naturally occurring affordable housing. Right, and the first word should be just for, FOR. So there's pressure for gentrification for naturally occurring affordable housing.
Okay.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the clarification. Other factors that restrict.
It looks like Dia has her hand up. Dia.
Go right ahead. Thank you for your assistance, Mick.
Yep. I would say pressure is the fact that we don't have a dedicated entity that follows units coming online and expiring that can provide information that would allow us then to prepare to capture those units. So lack of a dedicated entity, whether you want to call it an office, a department, a division, whatever, with the person in place that does this.
Very good. Mick, I'll let you help facilitate this.
I think John's joined us and has his hand up. So, John.
Hey, everybody. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late. I had trouble with the technology, of course. I would add this section, and you might want to listen to me say it first, and then I can repeat it. Section 66-35-102 of the Tennessee Landlord and Tenant Act preempts local governments from passing their own rent control ordinances. As such, Tennessee law does not protect tenants from large or unexpected increases in rent through rent control. This was passed, it looks like, in 2010.
Prohibits landlords from?
Let's see, it prohibits, Tennessee law does not protect tenants from large and unexpected increases in rent through rent control. It preempts local governments passing rent control ordinances. Does that make sense? 6635-102. It's 6635-102. There you go. That's it. Thank you.
Yep. Other restricting factors.
I just add to add a little addition to Councilmember Allen's point earlier. It's actually the rising property values, not only in the form of gentrification and others, impacts the affordable stock too. So some things that would otherwise that maybe have a subsidy that maybe not be uniformly naturally occurring. I think it's across the housing market is the rising land values is probably I might suggest is maybe the biggest pressure that restricts the preservation of our most affordable units.
Okay. Anyone else on restricting factors?
This is Councilmember Allen, if I can throw in one more. I think we know data is so important, and I would say the lack of a housing scorecard is a restricting factor as well.
And what would you want it to track in particular?
Creation and loss of affordable units. We just don't know what we have at any given time.
And then once Steve's got that on the paper, we'll go to Angie and then Eddie after that. Angie?
Funding to help make necessary repairs to stay in the home, especially if there are code violations. We have programs that exist, but I would imagine every organization that has a long waiting list.
So no funding source.
I wouldn't necessarily say absence, just not enough there because they're
limited.
But
so it's limited.
Limited, yes.
Okay. Who's next?
Eddie?
Well, something that hits me is what we're really competing with is people's deep pockets. And I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but all these funding sources that were listed in Jeremy's very interesting email and this in the spring now, these funding sources take quarters, not months, but quarters, if not a year, to obtain. And it's permanent funding type stuff. The construction's easy. But the problem is the investors just go out and, well, in 30 days, they got it bought. So if we're serious about doing this, the city is going to need to create some kind of acquisition fund that would enable them to go out and buy property, hold it for a couple of months or a year, until someone puts together a plan on how to renovate it and come up with that money, and then how to get permanent financing on it. Maybe that's a use for Amazon money, maybe it's something else, but the problem is that we don't have the time it takes on the traditional funding sources because we're competing with cash buyers. So that's just my point.
I'm sorry, like a line.
I couldn't hear. Is that to me?
Land bank, is that what you're thinking of?
Well, no, a land bank is where you actually throw the land somewhere. No, it's more like just an investor fund, like some kind of angel investor fund. It could be federal funds, it could be private funds, it could be local government funds.
Yeah.
There's some kind of cash that is in a bank that we can draw down, and it needs to have some committee oversight, that kind of thing. Does that help?
I had Marshall and then Kay after that. Dia, jump in if you need to clarify anything or follow up.
Mick, I trust you to correct my work.
Okay.
So what I would add is that if there isn't, a process in place that has the right of first refusal on affordable units. So if units are affordable now and an investor or owner decides they want to, once they become unrestricted or decide to turn it into market rate, there should be something of a right of first refusal that gives us the option of being able to acquire those properties and keep them affordable. So I think there is an absence of a right of first refusal or something of that sort.
Kay?
Eddie covered my piece, which is a social impact or an liquid fund that existed to allow properties to be acquired. So it gives time for whoever purchases it to line up long-term financing. That's a flexible equity fund or social impact fund.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I saw your hand go up and then go back down.
It's basically because Kay and Eddie addressed it, but along with Marshall said, when you have that right of refusal, there has to be some way to compensate the owner of that property for it not going market. And so again, that's to keep that home, to keep the property affordable. Because, we are competing in this market, we're competing with market rate developers who have cash ready to go to flip those properties and, get market rate for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I think we have a very good comprehensive list. Normally, we would do a ranking process, but because we're working virtual and there are several things we want to get through today, what we're going to do is have our task force co-chairs and our committee co-chairs help us rank it. So when we meet next, we can take a look at what they think are priority issues in terms of restrictive factors. We're going to turn our attention to factors that actually contribute to the preservation of affordable housing right now. So let's spend about 10 minutes kind of grabbing that information. Let's see if this list is going to be as long as the restrictive factors list.
Lethea, I see your hand still up. Or Kay?
Yep. I would just say one of the factors that contributes to the preservation of units that are affordable is when they are in the hands of mission-based nonprofits where housing is their mission. as opposed to the for-profit side of things. So if it gets into the hands of mission-based, capable housing nonprofits, it usually stays there.
Right. John.
I just would add aggressive funding of the Barnes Fund is a major factor in preservation, I believe. Not that we would use the funds exclusively for preservation, but they can be used for preservation, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, my understanding is it's certainly been used that way for a number of different projects over the last several years. Lethea.
The Community Investment Tax Credit Program, the CITC program.
Lethea, not everyone probably on the call is familiar with it. Do you want to give a quick summary of it, or I'd be happy. You want to go ahead and do that?
Yes, well, actually, Tennessee is one of the rare places where it's available, and it's a partnership with the Department of Revenue, THDA, for affordable housing. Nonprofit organizations can get a loan to preserve or to build affordable housing, and the interest rate can be as high, or I would say as low as prime -4 with a floor of 0. So in exchange for that, the banks get a waiver or a credit toward their franchise and excise taxes. So that compensates for the rate being at the prime -4.
Currently, just for example, if people are looking at this right now, prime is at 3.25, so prime -4 is something below 0, but you can borrow.
Yeah, so it does have a floor of 0.
Yes, you can borrow at negative interest rates, which is would be any nonprofit developer's dream. But yeah, so it's floor at 0, so we'll stay at 0 for the next little bit at least. Member Allen.
I would say organizations like Rebuilding are key to preservation.
And I think most people know what Rebuilding Together does, Councilmember Allen. But could you give a quick 20-second summary of it too?
So the rate cap on existing housing. Enough data.
I think that's a great start. People can always ask, and we can talk more about it. Eddie, I think you're next.
If I can do something, she's that brilliant executive director on my board. What Rebuild does is they focus on renovations only of owner-occupied housing, and specifically with elderly to help them age in place. So they're really good at the total rehab, single family. But what I'd like, there are two things I see. Is that one of them is that we have that list that Jeremy and others have access to. So we have the ability to know months, if not years in advance, when a property's going to sunset. So that gives us time to come up with a strategy on how to approach it. The second thing is that because it's a public-private thing, we may have the ability to create incentives. I don't know what they are, tax incentives, cash incentives, whatever, that would make selling to the affordable, let's just say us, for lack of a better term.
Eddie, I can see where you're going. You're heading towards solutions. So right now, I just want to sort of summarize and close out this conversation on what is contributing, what are factors that are contributing to the preservation of units currently. And we don't have to have an exhaustive list, we just need a good list. So based on the data.
You're right, that doesn't fit, the first one does.
Yeah, so based on the data that Greg walked us through, what did you all see as any other factors contributing to the preservation of units? Certainly, we can see we're up against it if we do nothing.
That's good. And And Eddie, you said you thought I started to believe that you might actually want to be a part of this committee.
Could I have 2 quarter pounder with cheese meals?
Someone
Can we ask everybody to mic themselves? Leslie, if you could mic folks who are not speaking, that would be great.
Angie, I think I had you next.
I'm not ordering food, so restrictions keep homes affordable, and especially in public subsidized, whether it's through a federal program or a local. Those can be longer than what the minimum are required by the programs.
Yeah, great. Marshall, what do you got for factors contributing to the preservation of units?
So while Alethea had mentioned the community investment tax credit, that's where nonprofits can take advantage of it, but we also provide low-cost capital for-profit developers to be able to fill a gap and being able to ensure that there is affordable units as well. So low-cost capital is also a contributing factor.
Awesome. Thank you. Jeremy.
I wanted to throw in, I guess, 2 comments to follow Eddie. And the first one is one of the things we've done with the QAP, the Qualified Allocation Plan, was we have eliminated the ability to opt out at the 15-year period for deals that have been done in the last couple of years and going forward. So that does give you, the newer developments will stay affordable for that full compliance period. The other one was on the Community Investment Tax Credit. I think we're talking about the CRA, the Community Reinvestment Act. So that might be helpful to put that acronym up there, just because that will help people understand what we're talking about. That's where banks get the incentive. They get basically tax breaks for investing in things that qualify under the CRA program. THDA and the Department of Treasury certify that the things that they're doing qualify under that program, and then they can take that off on their taxes.
And Jeremy, if I could just add to that too, I actually think of the CRA, Community Reinvestment Act, as slightly separate from the CITC. So I think of CITC as a great thing that THDA and the Tennessee state government has implemented in order to provide these low-cost loans. In addition to that, banks have their Community Reinvestment Act obligations, which is further incentive for them to look good in front of their regulators, in addition to it. So I think almost like I wouldn't want to minimize that. They're sort of complementary, I think, and maybe even a little bit distinct.
Okay.
I think the 2 most important factors on preservation are, 1, the creation of new units, right? It's just supply and demand, keeps price pressure for existing affordable units to stay affordable. And then the second is the presence of federal subsidies, which obviously support Section 8 and NDHA units, Section 9 PBRA units.
Can I go back to Jeremy Height for a second? I just wanted to get clarity on the QAP.
That's for the low-income housing tax credit. It's the rules that we put in place for that program.
Gotcha.
And then what is it? Yeah, the opt-out period, we eliminated the 15-year option.
And then what does QAP stand for again?
Qualified Allocation Program. Isn't that right?
I think it's plan.
Plan, that's right. We just call it the QAP.
Did I get that correct, Jeremy?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. At this point, we're right at 12:41. What I'd like to do is—
Hey, I'm just giving a heads up. Kay Bowers was raising her hand.
Oh, thank you. Kay, we'll take one more comment on factors contributing to the preservation of units, and then we're going to move on to some of our next questions.
Community land trust, scale it.
Excellent.
Hello, this is Lethea. I want to clarify something on the Community Reinvestment Act. Banks do not receive tax credits for qualifying investments, but we are encouraged and rated on what we do and our performance in the community. And so when we want to grow, expand, open a branch, close a branch, our record of how we respond to the community is evaluated, and that can affect those outcomes. So it's not that we receive any type of credit, not as in dollars, but you receive a rating on how you respond to the needs in your community. That's what the Community Reinvestment Act looks at.
Good deal, Lethea. Thank you for that clarification. Did we get Kay? Kay got in with Community Land Trust. So with that, I'd like to transition to some of our next questions. We have a few to get through. What's happening today to create this data story? Is there more background information on this?
Yeah, is that a question to the group?
To the group. Mm-hmm.
Hit or miss stories. The press emphasizing worries about things like evictions, more evictions coming. We don't have stories that are pushed out in newsletters. Things like that. So what's happening today, and then at the national level, big national organizations are consistently pushing out information about the housing affordability crisis.
What else is happening today to create this story? What are we seeing in the current environment?
Can I have a question? There's been a lot written and said in Nashville as well as nationally about repurposing a lot of buildings. Like I'm down here in Metro Center. There are a lot of buildings the state may never occupy again. I mean, what committee does that idea? It's something we need to figure out which committee that goes in. To me, it goes into this one. But we're recreating or not. We're preserving a building to recreate it. So it's sort of a schizophrenic thing. But that we have a lot of potential commercial vacant space that could be repurposed. That's the point.
What is that commercial vacant space? Why did it open up?
Why is it what?
Why did it open up? Why did that vacant space open up?
COVID. All of it COVID. Everybody went home. And people are realizing, well, maybe we don't need 30,000 square feet. Maybe we only need 10. Those kind of things. Okay.
Any other points on what's happening today to create this data story?
Yeah, this is Marshall. There is a significant reduction in affordable housing stock. A lot of individuals who were first-time home buyers of affordable housing stock, instead of them selling that unit, they're actually turning that unit into a rental property. So there is the lack thereof of that affordable housing stock. And so that is also a part of that today's story of the increase in small landlords.
Great. So if we do nothing, what will this look like in the future? What will Nashville look like in the future if we do nothing?
Can I say something to that?
Yes.
Okay, this Dan Lane. I think what we're seeing, and this go back to what is the data story in my opinion today. I think what exists in this city among many of your small rental properties, those owners is caught up in the thinking and of Nashville is an it city, and everything is going up in prices and benefits. So everybody is out to make a killing. And that attitude exists, I think, in this community. And as a result, what is being created is 90% of what I see being created is above any family who's at the medium household income. So if we don't do nothing, affordable housing will be pushed to the surrounding counties 10 to 15 miles away. That's it.
Thanks. Thanks, Dan. I think we have John up next.
Thanks. My daughter lives in Oakland, and every time I go to visit her in Oakland, California, I feel like I'm looking at what Nashville's worst case scenario would be if we do nothing. And what I see in Oakland, and my daughter sees a lot more of this because she's an activist in housing there, but what I see are overwhelming numbers of homeless people, extraordinarily high rents, phenomenal growth of businesses like Nashville, with Amazon and others moving in and sort of feeding the gentrification. But no, they're way under the 8 ball. And if they had the conversations we're having now 20 years ago, they wouldn't be in the situation they're in. So my hope and dream for Nashville is that we bypass Oakland's experience in housing.
Okay, very good.
Great example. Jeremy, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, and I would go on that same score, but probably even be a little more dire. I don't think that there's going to be enough capacity built into some of the rural areas to be able to take the outflow from Nashville and be affordable. We've seen the drop in the number of builders across the state, and the challenge of building at the affordable level is pretty high. If you combine that with wage growth that's fairly stagnant for the bottom or the lower end of the working force, it becomes very problematic for them. There's nowhere in the state where you can find affordable housing if you're making $7 an hour, the minimum wage. It's just not possible for the amount of hours you'd have to work. That's going to be a real challenge. And like the gentleman said about Oakland, you'll find that the working poor are effectively homeless. And that will be a real challenge for them and for the community.
Good deal. I am going to move us on. We have several questions to cover, but I think we're getting a picture of what is very much on people's minds about when we can do anything. So we talked a little bit about contributing factors to preserving housing. So what I'm going to do is copy the programs that folks talked about up here, which the programs that are currently listed here. I'm going to put over here. So what programs are contributing to the story? What's working to preserve units? I'm going to place that right here. If we need to fill that out a little bit more, we can do so with our co-chairs and the committee chairs. What I'd like to do is move down to the next question, which is what additional data or information do we need to better understand this data story? I believe Councilwoman Allen had mentioned that. And Councilwoman Allen, would you just remind us what data in particular would be helpful?
I think we need data on the number of units that we need and the number of units that we have. Okay. How that changes over time. And that was long ago called for as a housing card. You can call it anything you want.
Right.
And that's by income category.
Gotcha. Any other data or research that we should add to the list that we know we don't have?
Okay.
Yes. GIS mapping capability that shows the neighborhoods where existing housing is, and as new affordable units come on, where it will be placed, particularly because Mayor Cooper has a big focus on neighborhoods and neighborhood health.
Okay.
Great. Angie, I think you have your hand up.
Yes, I think we need data to link education outcomes to quality of housing, so that get a real understanding of the impact of housing on those things.
Dan again.
Okay, go ahead, Dan.
I think going back to the demo units that are available, I think we need to try to figure out some way of identifying available units of affordable housing that is not tax credit or related to Section 8.
The acronym we use, NOAA.
Yeah, naturally occurring. I was doing that.
Yeah.
Good deal. Okay.
Oh, you want
Is there
to?
one more? Do we have one more?
I'm not sure if John and Jeremy had something to add. John,
Okay.
I should have shut my thing down.
Okay. Jeremy, anything you wanted to add? I think these may have been from before. Yeah. They're still, their arms were getting tired.
Rest assured, I just want to let everybody know that the roles of your committee chairs will be to help identify additional data. So this won't be the end of this conversation. I think it's good to get these top line items up before us. The next question is really, who are the partners that can help us change this data story? How would we beat the baseline? Who are the partners who can help us beat the baseline? Who's not at the table on the Affordable Housing Task Force? Who would you like to see working with us?
Kay, you have some thoughts?
Philanthropic community. I was just on the phone with one of them this morning. They get it. Key business community that employs many of the people, particularly in the jobs where they are now.
I would say the Chamber of Commerce.
Kay, can I ask you a question? When you say the philanthropic community, are you talking about those that would support the efforts to get stuff built, the administrative costs? Are you talking about those who would become angel investors and help obtain stuff and hold it for a while?
Both. Those that would be interested in being angel investors for the equity fund, but those that would, but then in addition to that, you have to have infrastructure in terms of people to run things, and those that would help fund the operations to help make it happen. And so not narrowing it to foundations, but also capital management companies, partners, lawyers that work with people with money, not just narrowing it to foundations, but thinking broader.
Awesome. Councilmember Ellen.
That was one of my things was investors in the equity funds, and also I think the for-profit builders add to expertise like affordable housing solutions and Eddie's group, just having the rest of the building community at the table, even I think their input and buy-in and cooperation would be valuable. So the for-profit building community.
Yeah, and I would add advocates. Community advocates can help tell the story that you want told.
That's great. Then I call on.
Thing I would like to.
And I'd like to call on. Then I'd call on Greg.
I would say the largest private employers.
That's good.
Okay, Mick.
Oh, can I go to Greg and then you, Dan?
Okay.
Dia, are you looking for people we can invite into this process, or as we think about moving forward over the next 3 years, partners that we want in
moving forward over the next 3 years. So Greg, that's a great question. And just as a reminder, obviously, as we move out with a framework, the framework is going to be heavily loaded to the first 3 years with some building and forecasting into the midterm 3 to 10 years. So yes, so who are the partners that can help us change the curve, essentially?
So one thing I would throw out is maybe just partnerships with other counties and other cities throughout Tennessee. So much of our struggle is, kind of the differing view on affordability with the state. So kind of building a statewide or at least a robust regional network could be useful.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay. A good public relations fund organization that will put together a good marketing program to begin to imprint the importance of mixed income housing. What we hear today is luxury upper income housing, and we don't understand the need for mixed income housing, and we need a good public relations program, a firm that would concentrate on both print and radio, TV, media of the benefits of mixed income housing.
No, that's great. Thanks, Dan. One thing I'll throw out there that I don't think has really been mentioned, and Greg, when you started speaking, is where it triggered for me. It's our local government departments. The planning department has a role to play here across different aspects of metro government, and then the state government. Obviously, THDA is at the table. The planning department is at the table right here as part of that conversation. But obviously, our state legislators are a stakeholder and an influencer of what we can do, and throughout and all the way up to the governor. So I would just broadly say government departments and representatives are key stakeholders in finding a comprehensive implementation in order to preserve affordable housing.
If I could just add to that, Metro Council members, public elected officials.
Good deal. I think this is a great list. We are now going to work on our last few questions, which is really, now that we've taken a look at 3 data pieces that help us tell the story, that we are going to see, continued growth, especially in jobs beneath $30,000 a year. we are going to continue to see a gap in rental housing that will grow if we don't do anything. So the real question is, what works to beat that baseline? What works to turn that curve? So more specifically, what can we do to extend existing rental subsidies?
Well, I think what we've touched on, if I just quickly summarize some of the earlier things, is identifying and getting ahead of the expiration of potential rental subsidies across our project-based portfolio across the city. I think a number of people have brought that up. So just making sure we do everything we can as a city to keep those in the project-based Section 8 program.
I would say beyond that, a strategic plan for ensuring the capture and preservation of those units tied to dates of expiration and what's going to be needed in terms of potential money sources to acquire it and then maintain it. A strategic plan for that.
So what are some best practices that folks are using elsewhere in order to extend existing rental subsidies?
So if I may touch on some of the things that have already brought up, that sort of right of first refusal or early notification, those types of things. I think there'd be quite a few people who would say maybe they're not best practices, but they are practices that are used to do this in other places where there is early notification and potentially right of first refusals for subsidized properties.
Are there any other activities or interventions that cities are using to extend existing rental subsidies?
Property tax reductions or extensions, pilots, payment in lieu of taxes, those sorts of things are incentives to help current owners keep the units affordable or make that happen.
What else?
Financial incentives. Financial
Sorry?
incentives.
Related to that, I would just say low cost to no cost capital. I mean, that's really what the subsidy is. It's just, it's technically free money, although it is owed back and people are accountable and responsible for it. It ties right into one of the pieces of the market.
So is that an existing rental subsidy? Would that help with extending existing rental subsidies? Or is that really about shifting non-subsidized houses to subsidized housing?
But here's the deal. It's all about the permanent finance.
Yeah.
So what you got to do is it costs $130,000 to build a 3-bedroom unit. It doesn't matter who's living in there. So you've got to get it down so your debt service is at 60. So you can either give them a ton of money every year in Section 8 vouchers, which is an annual never-ending story, or you can give them really cheap capital that has a minor return so that their debt service is cut by 25, 50%.
Gotcha. So we'll keep it under what to do in order to extend existing rental subsidies. Okay. So what can we do to shift non-subsidized, subsidized to make it affordable? So we're talking about market rate. How do we shift it into a subsidized environment to make it affordable?
Oh my gosh. If it's a different story if you're talking about market rate housing to housing that's below market rate with subsidies than it is if you're talking about below market rate, naturally occurring affordable housing that's just below market rate, and you want to keep it preserved. So that it's a little different depending on how you think about it.
There's a difference in subsidies. There's federal, there's local incentives. More subsidies is one thing that's needed, but the other are subsidies that are flexible and nimble. I think a lot of federal subsidies have a lot of red tape in and of themselves. So we're looking at what we can create. We need to look at like nimble.
Councilmember Allen?
That's overhand.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have one more?
I mean, I think the one way that this can occur is through the low-income housing tax credit program. There are times where you can purchase unsubsidized apartment buildings and make the numbers work and convert them to affordable. There's not a whole lot of opportunity for that these days, but there is still possibilities where that's occurred.
Excellent. So I think we got to move to the last question.
Yeah, could I say one other one?
Yes.
Could we consider some type of property tax break for people who would agree to keep their rental at a certain level? Tax break.
Yeah, I like that. It's great.
Good deal. So the final question is, how can we help the market better serve the non-subsidized households at lower levels of income?
You have to have mechanisms that provide enough incentive and affordability for the owners to feel it's worth their while to keep the units at affordable rates.
So Kay, is it sort of feels to me that the market, if we're framing the question as market, then probably the market is just going to go in line with supply and demand and earn as much money as possible. So that you have to pay the market to bring it back down. It sounds like that you were saying, which is then going back to the subsidy question again, right? Like in one form or the other. I think it's just want to see if we're on the same page.
Yes, yes, you are, and it comes down also to stewardship of public monies and where does it make the most sense to invest, public dollars, and how much do you have to put in the bucket to convince people with market rate housing not to go after the highest return? How much subsidy does the market want is really, it comes down to that. It's a tough nut to crack.
Yeah.
I know this is a challenge here because I'm preempted by the state, but there's work across the state being done around this to help change this, but mixed income housing where, there's a percent of affordable units within market rate housing, and the numbers kind of NDHA's model that it's going to, where the market rate housing helps cover some of the cost of the lower income units. And there are models, very good models out there that show without any subsidy that when you have this type of mix, that you can make it work. So let's find those best practice models and bring them and study them and see if we can make them work here.
Yeah, no, that's great. Angie.
Had flexible land use policies that would allow a homeowner to create some affordable housing rental. The Council on Aging is actually exploring a great model to look at how seniors who want to stay in their home could create some affordable rental housing for students. We give them a little more income, create some affordable housing, but the zoning has to be right, those types of things. So I think we can look at where there's that's a barrier.
Councilmember Allen.
So two things. Number one, I have a bill that's going in county council right now that would enable mother-in-law to that kind of deals with land use things. That's a solution, so I should write it. And second is that we are also working at the state level and hopefully as a result of the recommendations from this task force to try to use housing some in the NDHA or the IDP as a tax incentive that would fill in the gaps. Nick raises the question, it may still be considered a subsidy, but if you can lower the if you can guarantee a builder that their property tax costs will be lower, then they can invest. I mean, then they know their cash flow costs will be lower. They can afford a little bit. So PILOT, state level, we have to change legislation to enable us to use that for properties. So change legislation on pilot to expand it beyond the housing tax credit. We have to pass the local legislation.
Okay, Mick.
Yes, Anthony.
One of the things I think we can do is providing public-owned properties that's no longer serving its best use that could be converted to housing at a lower price and incentive to for-profit builders to come in and build affordable housing, to transfer it into affordable housing. For example, if we got schools that are no longer serving as this purpose for education, could we convert those into housing and provide that incentive to builders to come in and convert it at a good cost?
Yeah. No, that makes sense to me.
Nick, did I capture that?
Yeah. Dan, does that look? I think that looks right to me. And it's providing.
But I would say with right of first refusals and a way to preserve it.
Okay.
You need to have that hook that stays with it.
So, I don't know. I want to sort of run this by the group. So one of the things I'm hearing from this is how to make the markets operate in order to create more housing opportunities, affordable housing opportunities. Sort of, I hear things falling into two potential columns. One of which is figure out other ways to subsidize or give them incentives in a variety of ways. The other one is sort of this creation of usable land. So whether that's the dadu, the mother-in-law cottages, sort of the land use restrictions that Angie was talking about as well, it's sort of, this is one way that can happen, that the city could do something where they sort of end up increasing the supply of, I'm going to say buildable lots. That's not exactly the best sort of terminology. Is that sort of sounding right to what folks have said so far?
Well, I would tie it to zoning modifications that would allow for more density on police, smaller lots for duplexes, triplexes, small multifamily, and adus and adus. That's the zoning piece, right? And then, oh my gosh, my brain went whoop. Oh my God.
We're 75 minutes into a Zoom call, Kay. I think it's very understandable.
I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. It was just like,
I tell you what, we'll have a chance. I promise everybody will have a chance to come back to look at this. We still need to dig in a little bit into the program data next week. So we'll be taking a look at Section 8, LIHTC, the Barnes Fund. So those will be teed up next week. I promise you all, you will have a second chance to look at this. We'll get this sort of ranked and prioritized as well. But we do have 13 minutes left on the call. We have completed our full assignment today. I'm so excited. And with these last 13 minutes, we need to pick a chair and a vice chair. Let me simply say the chair of the committee is the people person. That's the person who gets to understand everybody's interests, recommendations, expertise, etc. The vice chair is the information person. That's the person who helps to ensure and keep me and my colleagues, Greg Claxton and John Bunton, on task around additional data we need to be looking at, additional evidence-based research that needs to get out to folks, any other information that can help inform our work and the prioritization of recommendations. So the chair is the people person, the vice chair is the information person. So with that, I'm going to close my screen. I can send out this draft information to you all as soon as we're done. But we're going to open up and see if there is anybody who would like to self-nominate for chair, or if you would like to nominate somebody else as chair of this committee. Mick Nelson cannot serve. So I know, isn't that terrible?
I was going to be the guy. What happened?
I know. He's our task force co-chair.
Okay. Okay. Oh.
Any nominations for chair?
This is Berkeley. I think John Dean is a people person. Would you be interested?
Well, I'd like to nominate Kay Bowers.
Another good choice.
I was going to suggest for the people person chair, the co-chair, that Matt Wilshire would be awesome, and for the information, if I'm saying that correctly, co-chair Kay Bowers would be excellent for what that's worth. I'm really nervous about taking on the responsibility. I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed with my current plate, but those are two great people right there.
Okay, so we have a nomination on the table for Kay as vice chair. Actually, two nominations on the table for Kay as vice chair. We need to see, there's a nomination on the table for Matt Wilshire as chair. Matt, are you going to accept this nomination?
I politely and respectfully decline. I think someone else could probably be better at that role than me.
Okay, do we have another recommendation for chair? Nomination for chair. You can self-nominate.
What about Lethea? Would you be interested in being chair?
Yeah. Good.
Yes.
Did I hear that correctly? Is Lethea willing to accept the nomination for chair? Okay.
Just so you know, I'm about to unmute you, so just in case.
Right. One only citizen count.
Lethea, you still with us?
This list.
She may not be.
She's on the phone. We can't not.
I think is an acceptance in Robert's Rules of Order, right? If you don't respond, then you accept. I think that's what it says in the book.
Is that what? Wait a minute.
Kay, hang on a second. We'll get to chair, so don't worry. But to vice chair. But right now we're working on chair. So we did not hear from Lethea with an affirmative acceptance of the nomination. Are there any other chair nominees?
How about
Okay.
Angie Hubbard?
Yeah.
Angie Hubbard is chair.
Angela Hubbard, would you accept this nomination?
Okay.
Oh, we got a chair. All right, so we got one. Are there any other nominations for chair?
All right. Looks like we have a slate.
So hang on a second. Vice chair. Kay has been nominated as vice chair. Kay, do you accept this nomination as vice chair?
If I could have Greg Claxton be my co-chair.
I think he'll be your support person. I think that's fair, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I think that's an acceptance. We're going to count that as an acceptance. Are there any other nominations for vice chair?
I move we accept this slate by acclamation.
Oh. Is that a motion?
That was a motion.
Do we have
Is there a second on the motion? Do we have a second on the motion?
I second the motion.
Okay, we're opening the floor for comments. We have a slate that is the chair will be Angela Hubbard. The vice chair will be Kay. Is there any comments? Kay Bowers for vice chair. Are there any other comments? Remarks?
I think it sounds like a great slate.
Highly qualified.
All right, excellent. So moved. Good deal, folks. We've got our committee chairs. We've got our next steps.
Dia, could I just put two words in your brain? Because I remembered on the last item we were on, it was public land. For the last question was utilization of unused public land. I remember. Okay.
We will be sure. I think on that note, Kay, we will be sure to send the whole committee the notes that we drew up today. And we will be working with Angela and Kay and Mick and Edward to see if we need to shake out some more information, and we will be bringing this information back to the committee after we look at the program data. So next week, we're going to look at program data. So we're looking forward to that presentation. There'll be a lot of good stuff there.
Okay.
And I think Edward was maybe with us for a lot of it, but was as an attendee rather than a participant. So I think next week he'll be here with us, and I will similarly being attending the new construction meetings as well. So that's sort of where Edward and I play a role and aren't necessarily the appropriate chair people of each individual committee. Will be working to make sure that things are moving along parallel with John and Dia and Greg and all of the great people at Metro as well. So.
Great. Thank you all. We've landed this plane 5 minutes early. I'm going to just check in with John Bunton to see if he has anything he'd like to say, or Mick, if you'd like to close us out.
I just want to say congratulations to our new chair and vice chair. This was a great meeting. Fantastic work, Dia, and everybody for participating.
Excellent. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.